Hello again, everybody. It's time to talk some sports and the only sports talk show that really matters right here on IUP-TV. We like to call it the Big Hit. I'm your host, Josh Hill. There's a lot of sports to discuss. We're going to discuss them all here tonight. We're going to begin in the National Football League because there were a few marquee matchups to take a look at, and we will do so on the show. And also, we'll shift our coverage to the fantasy football side of things in today's Fantasy Focus, giving you everything you need to know in the world of fantasy football to help you hopefully win your league. Hopefully you're still in contention. And then we'll move on to the Major League Baseball segment in our Call to the Bullpen, recapping a tremendous World Series between the San Francisco Giants and the Kansas City Royals, a 7-game series there, and then looking at the end-of-the-year accolades and who we think will win those awards. And then we'll move on to the penalty box and hit the ice with the NHL segment, give a quick injury update to various stars throughout the league, and take a look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and their torrid pace they've been on. Can they keep it up? We'll discuss it all here in the NHL segment. Then we'll close things out with our college football segment, examining who can make it into the top 4 after a wild week. A lot of top 25 matchups. We'll have it all for you, ladies and gentlemen. 5 segments, 10 analysts, 1 sports talk show that really matters. It's the Big Hit. And welcome into the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to start our show with some National Football League talk here in the Red Zone Recap. And we've got some great guys to do that with Dimitri George and Darnell Turner. Gentlemen, let's go ahead and start in Big D, Jerry World, wherever you want to call it. We're going to start in Dallas, Texas with the Dallas Cowboys and Arizona Cardinals. One of the most highly anticipated games of the week. Arizona coming into Dallas, defeating the Cowboys 28-17. Arizona moves to 7-1. On the year. That gives them the best record in the NFC. But the million-dollar question is, are they the best team in the NFC, or are they at least proving to be so?
Well, Josh, I'll tell you what. Last time I checked, in the NFL, style points don't matter. It doesn't matter how you get it done, no matter how many points you win by. As long as you get W's, you're going to be in good shape. And I think with the Arizona Cardinals defeating the Cowboys, I know they were out without Tony Romo. That's a big loss for the Cowboys, but the Cowboys still have a lot of talent on offense. Guys like Dez Bryant, Jason Witten, DeMarco Murray, and the Cardinals, who came in as one of the better rushing defenses in the league, held that team under 100 yards as a whole rushing. And you look at Dez Bryant, who was virtually shut down to the very end of the game where he got a garbage time touchdown. The Arizona Cardinals are for real. Give a lot of credit to head coach Bruce Arians, Steve Keim, their GM, really on the same page as a whole, as an organization, and they really have really developed good young players. Tyrann Mathieu looking really good coming off his ACL injury from last year. And if you look at the Arizona Cardinals, they're just a team who plays really solid defense. They've got a good solid front seven. Larry Foote seems like he's playing really well. Who's a guy who came over from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you got Calais Campbell along that front seven as well. And the back end, you can't say enough about Cromartie, Peterson, Matthew, guys like this. Tony Jefferson, another young guy playing well for them. Just an overall solid team. And, I get it, the Cowboys didn't have Tony Romo, but unfortunately for them, the Cardinals, I think, still are the better team with Romo.
I think the Arizona Cardinals, they're showing that they are one of the top teams in the NFC, but I still need to see more from them. The rushing defense is really good. First in the league, they held DeMarco Murray. They ended his streak. But the pass defense is what I'm worried about. And this is a passing league. So when you go against teams that pass the ball the most, they're going to struggle. They're dead last in the league, giving up passing yards a game. So that secondary, while it does have Tyrann Mathieu back, so it's going to improve, it's going to get better, I think we still need to see more from them. Now, they are grinding out and winning games, and it's all about the wins. And right now they're 7-1, so the number 1 seed. And if they can keep that number 1 seed and have the trip to the Super Bowl go through Arizona, I think they'll be a very dangerous team.
It'll be Arizona in Arizona.
Yeah, for
Super Bowl.
Yeah, and that would be quite an interesting dynamic there. But the Cardinals certainly putting in work against the Dallas Cowboys. Without Tony Romo, Brandon Weeden, how about this for his QBR? 7.5 on Sunday, and that is the 10th time in his career that he has posted a sub-20 QBR.
Yikes.
Brandon Weeden continuing to do his thing in Big D. But we're going to go ahead and move on to arguably the most anticipated game of the day, that moving into the AFC with the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots, or otherwise known as Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady. This time, Tom Brady got the better of Peyton Manning in the 16th meeting between the two all-time greats. 43-21 was the score on Sunday. How does this win affect the Patriots moving forward? Because they look like they really put themselves in a good position.
Well, first, before I get into that, Josh, let me just say this. I'm kind of to the point where I'm had enough of this series between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. This game was so hyped, as they all are, and they still will be hyped until both of them are retired. But, it just seems like every time the Patriots just have Peyton Manning's number. I know he's won a handful of times, but it's just these games never turn out to be great ones, except for last year when Denver got up big in New England. New England came back and won. But other than I'm just tired. I'm just tired of being fed these two great quarterbacks. Don't get me wrong, but it's just time to move on from these two. But going back to the question, the Patriots, and I think it really comes down to Rob Gronkowski. Looks like he's getting back to full health, and he's fully healthy, and he's getting back into form because when you start making catches like he did the other day, the one-handed with his left hand in between a safety and a linebacker, and he's just a matchup nightmare for any defense. And you look at their defense as a whole, you can see guys like Brandon Browner starting to make an impact. Darrelle Revis, we know what he can do. And they're just overall, their defense is solid. The New England Patriots, a couple weeks ago when they lost 41-0 or whatever it was to the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football, I myself included thought they're done. But Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, give them credit. Again, I'm still waiting to see what they do in the playoffs because when they lost 41-0, I still thought they were going to be in the playoffs because their division, quite frankly, stinks. Although right now the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins are playing well right now, but I still ended up thinking at the end of that game the Patriots are going to go to the playoffs. So, does it surprise me they beat the Broncos in the manner they did? A little bit, but not entirely. I've seen them do that before. The Patriots are a team to be reckoned with, obviously, moving forward. As long as Gronk stays healthy, they're going to be in the mix of everything.
I don't think this one really affects the Patriots as far as moving ahead, thinking they have confidence. I think coming into the game, they already knew that they had confidence that they can put up points. And the defensive backs of the Patriots have been playing really well the last couple of weeks. Darrelle Revis, Brandon Browner, Kyle Arrington, they're all playing great. And for Tom Brady, after the Kansas City game, losing 41-14, whatever it was, everyone thought he was washed up, he was done. Since then, five straight wins, 18 touchdowns to 1 interceptions. He's playing great. And Gronkowski is turning into Gronk of the old. And if him and Tom Brady stay connect with each other the way they are right now, it's a scary team. But I think it'll come down to who has home field advantage in the playoffs.
Yeah, the Patriots putting themselves in very good position. There are a few things I want to make note of. Of course, Rob Gronkowski, you said how great of a game he had. He 105 yards and a touchdown, his 50th receiving touchdown of his career. He did it in 59 games, and there's only one guy that has done that faster, former Chargers great, Lance Alworth. And then Peyton Manning also threw another passing touchdown, his 47th straight game with a passing touchdown, tying Johnny Unitas for the third longest streak in NFL history. But the Patriots putting themselves in a good position, beating a lot of people's favorite in the AFC, the Denver Broncos. But let's go ahead and move on to the Steel City, because there was a big-time showdown on a night where Joe Green got his number retired. The Steelers and the Ravens harkened back to football of old and played one of the most physical games that I can remember in a long time. And the Pittsburgh Steelers came out of this rivalry with a victory. 42-23 was the final score. Dimitri, the Steelers have won 3 games in a row. What have they done to turn their season around? Because going into this, it was all but over.
Well, Josh, if you go back a couple weeks and you look at their game against the Cleveland Browns, where they lost 31-10, a lot of people wrote them off and said that they're done, and they were fire everybody from the head coach, GM, everybody down. You look at this football team now in this 3-game homestand that they just finished. Even in the Houston game, they still struggled, but in that 73-second window, they had a little electricity and caught fire. And since then, you look at Ben's last 2 games where he set an NFL record throwing 12 touchdown passes in 2 games. It's the offense, and I really am a believer in the fact that Martavis Bryant's presence alone has really helped this offense. He's got 5 touchdowns in his first 3 NFL games. He was inactive for the first 6 weeks of the season. 3 games, 5 touchdowns, and I think his presence, as I mentioned, the emergence of him, guys like Marcus Wheaton, who has his 2nd touchdown in as many games on Sunday. Lance Moore, more playing time. These guys, as long as they keep emerging, teams might not be able to double team Antonio Brown, and even if you do double team Antonio Brown, it seems like nobody can cover him. That guy has got to be the best receiver in the league right now as we sit here today. And like I said, the offense is starting to put up points in bunches, and the defense is finally getting pressure on the quarterback. James Harrison's playing like he's 25 years old, and when that happens, the Steelers defense is going to be pretty well. If they can get pressure on the quarterback, that'll elude some of that issues they have in the back end, and that'll definitely help them moving forward. So the Steelers are on a 3-game losing streak. They have 2 games in which they should win before the bye week, but we know with the Steelers, they tend to drop the easy ones. So they're definitely going to have to be on their P's and Q's. They can't drop another one like they did earlier in the season when they lost to Tampa Bay.
You know, everyone wants to give credit to the Steelers' offense, and rightfully so, because they played great the last 3 weeks. But I'm going to give a little bit of credit to the defense. If you remember the last time they played the Ravens, they had, for the first time in the franchise, no big plays, no sacks, no turnovers, no touchdowns. And the last 3 weeks, the defense has been getting turnovers. Against Houston, they were +2 in the turnover ratio, had 2 turnovers against the Colts, 1 in turnover ratio this past weekend versus the Ravens. So the defense getting turnovers and getting that big bend the ball and letting him and the offense work is helping the Steelers out right now.
Yeah, and despite Ben Roethlisberger's 6 touchdowns for a second straight game, which is just absolutely incredible, I have to say that James Harrison was probably the best player out on the football field last Sunday. He was a big-time impact player, and he's somebody that really helped cue the Steelers to victory, a knockdown, drag-them-out kind of affair. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are really impressive right now. And Ben Roethlisberger says that this offense is still a work in progress. That's a pretty scary thought to think that this offense can get even better than it has been.
He's never satisfied with how his offense is playing. That's how it always is. And just real quick, just a note, that stadium as a whole, I had the pleasure to be there. The whole Joe Green ceremony, that really had the entire stadium rocking. Just his presence alone. I'd never gotten the chance to see him play, but just gave everybody in the crowd, I guess, chills, you would say, because when he came out there to halftime, it was really a special moment.
Yeah, and Joe Green talked to the Pittsburgh Steelers before the game. It took them a little while to get going, but once they did, they were off and rolling. But let's go ahead and expand things to the big picture here, talking about the AFC North as a whole, because it is the most competitive division in all of football. Every team is above 500, so the Steelers are in first place currently, but not a lot of room separating first from last. Who do you have winning the AFC North at the end of the season?
Well, I want to give you a quick notes on each team. You look at the Browns, they've got a game on Thursday night this week against the Bengals, which I think will be really telling. And they've got they've had their 5 of the first 8 games have been at home, and they've got a bit of a tougher stretch coming up here. And you look at, so we'll get to see if they're for real. I think their running game has dropped dramatically since their loss of Alex Mack, the center, when he went down with an injury against the Steelers a few weeks ago. You look at the Baltimore Ravens; they've already lost twice to the Bengals, and they split with the Steelers, and they're sitting at 5-4. They've got a pretty tough schedule ahead of themselves as well. Games against the Saints still, so in New Orleans, so that's always a tough matchup. But it's really hard for them after already losing 3 games in the division. The Cincinnati Bengals. I think they're the most talented team in this division. I picked them to win the division at the start of the season, but so that they aside from Gaff and the Jaguars defense, the Jaguars, that was a 3-point game in the fourth quarter. And I know they got A.J. Green back, but Andy Dalton scares me. You look at the Pittsburgh Steelers; they still have 2 games against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I think the game that will decide the division will be the Week 17 matchup with the Cincinnati Bengals in Pittsburgh. And I'm going to give it to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just like the way they're playing. As I said, they have 2 winnable games before the bye week. They can head in 8-3 and have a 5-game stretch where they play 3 out of their last 5 games at home. So I like the Pittsburgh Steelers to win that division.
Well, right now, let's say the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to win this division, but I think it's going to come down to that Week 17 matchup in Pittsburgh. Cincinnati, at the beginning of the season, they looked really dominant. They looked like they were going to run away with this division, but they're so up and down, and they've had injuries. And at the end of the season, it's just hard to trust Andy Dalton. So if the Cincinnati Bengals can stay in until the end of the season, I think it'll come down to that Week 17 matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these teams bit up and down, sporadic play so far this year. But if the Steelers are able to win the division, whoever wins this division, you have to consider them to be a dark horse AFC championship title contender.
I'm sorry. If you look at both the Broncos and the Patriots more so, they have a rough schedule coming up. So a team that can win this division could possibly compete with one of those first 2 seeds, could possibly get by, and maybe even home field advantage But definitely, as you mentioned, this is the most competitive division. All teams above 500. So obviously, there's no doubt in my mind that one of these teams could be a dark horse, as you mentioned.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the 1-8 Jets. We'll see what happens
like a bye
this
week for
Sunday.
them.
That's what you would think, but you never know with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's all the time we have here for our Red Zone recap. We're going to leave it here. Coming up next, we're going to dive into the world of fantasy football with Vaughn Dalzell and Connor Joyce in the Fantasy Focus. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
It's hard to explain. It just became home. There are hundreds of majors and programs, bachelor's degrees to PhDs, small classes and faculty that really get to know you. Amazing internships and everywhere programs that help to find a job that is right for you. It's what IUP is about, a commitment to your success. See it for yourself. Visit us, Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Find your success.
Here at The Big Hit, we like to be prepared, because sometimes technology doesn't always work, so we do what we can.
Hey, Sean, hit him up.
This just in, Tim Tebow just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. That's not right.
Maybe we need to prepare just a little more.
Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus. I'm Vaughn Dalzell and to the left is Connor Joyce. And for all you people that love fantasy football, today will be a great segment for you because we're going to talk about our top players, our ads, our drops, and everyone who's exceeded our expectations. And first, we're going to start with Connor Joyce and his top 5 picks.
Well, Vaughn, it's been a great year for fantasy football. As you can see, my top picks, I have Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, DeMarco Murray, Arian Foster, and Jeremy Maclin, all fantastic players so far this year. Let's start with Peyton Manning, guy who's been so reliable in fantasy football his entire career. He puts up numbers week in, week out. He's so accurate in the pocket, and as you can tell, he scores touchdowns like it's his job. Andrew Luck, best year of his career, absolutely so far. He has been so good for the Indianapolis Colts. He's on pace to actually break Peyton Manning's passing touchdown record this year. Unbelievable numbers for Andrew Luck. He's been one of the most consistent fantasy quarterbacks so far this year. I don't think he's had a score less than 22 in ESPN fantasy football. And then you look at my number 3 in DeMarco Murray, the leading rusher in the NFL right now. He's been fantastic for your fantasy teams if you have him. You cannot deny the tenacity of, excuse my language of the bad word, but he's been great for the Dallas Cowboys. But then you look at Arian Foster, a guy who had a slow start and then really has started to pick it up here the last 2 weeks and has been a great addition for the Houston Texans after his injury last season. And then a guy that really is surprising, he came off a huge ACL tear last year. People weren't really thinking he was going to come back and put up the numbers he has this year. And since he's come back, he's been the biggest addition to the Philadelphia Eagles offense and really has led this team to the record they have.
Yeah, I like your picks a lot. I have pretty similar ones, only 2 on the board. Of course, Andrew Luck will be my number 1. He's put up the most points in fantasy football this season. He's just been killing. Like you said, he's on pace to beat Peyton Manning's record. He scored every time over 20 every game this year. Second is DeMarco Murray. I mean, he's on pace to break Eric Dixon's single-season rushing record. How often do you have a guy that's going to break a passing record and a rushing record in the same season? Number 3, Antonio Brown. He has the most receiving yards in the NFL, the most targets in the NFL, second most touchdowns for receivers. He's just killing this year. Number 4 would be Julius Thomas, who's Peyton's main man. I put it that way. He's second in the league in touchdowns for a tight end. He's been killing. He's such a red zone threat, which makes him so valuable to Peyton Manning and the Broncos. And number 5 can be a surprise to a lot of people this year, Ben Roethlisberger, mainly because his touchdown ratio is insane. He's throwing 22 touchdowns with 3 picks. He's went on a 12 touchdown to 0 pick streak in 2 games. He's playing outstanding right now. But moving on to our next part of this, who's the guy that's outplayed what you think what they did this year?
Well, I want to talk about a guy who you just mentioned in Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger has been outstanding for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially in the last few weeks. He's really led this team to where it's at right now, contending for the division. A lot of people didn't really think that Pittsburgh might be able to win this division. They might be second and get a wild card, but here they are fighting in the last 7 weeks of the season with 2 more division games left in the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's really interesting to see how well Ben has played for this team this year. I think he's definitely been the best, most surprising player for football.
No, I totally agree with that. I thought that was honestly one of the people that I suggested I thought about, but I'm going with number 2 on my list, DeMarco Murray, simply because no one expected the Cowboys. Everyone said they're going to be a mediocre team, and he surprised everyone by the way he's played. He's helped Tony Romo out so much and Des Bryant. And, I mean, he started the season off with 9 games straight of 100 yards. I mean, you really can't beat that when it comes to that. He's just outstanding. And who hasn't played up to par, do you think?
I look at a guy like LaShawn McCoy. He's been very, very disappointing this season. I think he needs to kind of step it up because now that Nick Foles has kind of fallen out of that number 1 running or quarterback role, Sanchez is stepping in. You got to look at that Eagles run game. You got to look at LaShawn McCoy to really step up his game. Darren Sproles even with that backup. But you look at LaShawn McCoy coming off a season having the most rushing yards. And this year's just been very disappointing. He really needs to step it up for the rest of the season if this Eagles team wants to make the playoffs and really soar right through.
I agree with that. I went a different route. I went to the quarterback, Cam Newton of the Carolina Panthers, mainly because he's been a dual-threat quarterback for the past couple years, and this year they just haven't been the same team. He lost his main receiver in Steve Smith last year, and now he has a rookie as his number 1 in Calvin Benjamin, who's playing pretty well, but they have no run game also, so it's a lot of the burden's been on Cam Newton this year, and he hasn't handled it as well as the team's been slacking, obviously. They're not in first place to the New Orleans Saints. And next, we'll go to our ads. Who would you want to add at this point in the season?
You look at a lot of the add and drops. There's a lot. It's tough. A lot of leagues are different. People, everybody goes different ways. But you look at some of the injuries in the NFL, and I think one of the big ones this week was Nick Foles. I think Mark Sanchez looked very, very well in the Eagles' offense this past weekend. He looked very calm and very good. He was very accurate and knew what he was doing with the football each play. So I think he's definitely a big guy to watch. You can also look at a guy like Brandon LaFell from New England. He's been playing great. He's been a great target for Tom Brady. You can look at a guy like Denard Robinson for Jacksonville. He's been a great running back down there, and for a team that has almost no hopes for anything. Exactly. So he's been playing great for that team. And then you look at a guy, I know he's not back yet, but Josh Gordon. He's coming back soon, 2 weeks, and he is going to be great for your fantasy teams because the Browns are contending.
Yes.
Can you believe it? Contending for a division title. So you look at a guy like Josh Gordon who could really bring up your fantasy teams, especially if you're lower in those rankings.
Yeah, Josh Gordon would be a steal for anybody.
Especially in the playoffs.
Oh, yes. And I went to a receiver route also. I went to Martavius Bryant, the rookie receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, mainly because he has 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's a red zone threat. He's a big receiver who can run flag routes all the time. He was overlooked out of college because he played with Sammy Watkins, who was the 4th overall pick. And I like also Jeremy Hill out of LSU. He put up a 100-yard game last game. He plays the Browns now, who their defense has been slacking lately. They let up a lot of points the last couple games, and I think he can be a big-time adjustment if he hasn't been picked up already for your team. But who would you drop at this point in the season?
I have 3 guys that I would drop. Some guys that have been very, very disappointing so far in the NFL. I look at a guy like Wes Welker in Denver. He's been very disappointing. He got hurt last week. He should be okay this week to play, but injury report's still coming out. Wes Welker's been very disappointing for Peyton Manning. Not been the best target in that offense. Then you can look at a guy like Doug Martin down in Tampa Bay. People expected him to come in this year and really put up numbers, and Bobby Rainey's been coming in. He's been playing well for that team. But Tampa Bay's not looking good. Doug Martin's not looking good, so I would get rid of him if he's still on your roster. And then you can look at a guy like Bernard Pierce, who a lot of people expected to step up and fill a big role with Ray Rice leaving. So I think you really look at these 3 guys, and if they're on your roster, it might be time to get rid of them and pick up some guys that are filling roles for injured players.
It definitely hurt that Bernard Pierce that Justin Forsett was playing so well for him. But a guy I like who played very well for a minute, but got his spot taken back was Niles Davis of the Chiefs. Jamal Charles came back last 2 games, has been playing very well. Niles Davis has seen his carries and receptions go down. It's hurt. If you have him, it's probably a good time to let him go and pick up someone else that might step up from injury. And another one is an array of players. I think it's anyone on the Jets offense because who's their quarterback now? Is Geno Smith, is his shoulder okay? Is Matt Sims really the quarterback that's going to be able to get the ball to every receiver? It's going to be tough to say, and it's going to be interesting to see who can really step up for them. But that is all the time we have for Vaughn Delzell and Connor Joyce. We sent it to Josh Hill in the MLB segment, and we hope we helped your fantasy football team this week.
Listen, all I'm saying is LeBron James is better than Michael Jordan.
did everybody get so quiet? How are they gonna watch this when you are just in La La Land? This is embarrassing.
Is that bad?
Look at you.
You know, I thought this was a pretty good segment.
Did you?
Yeah.
Do you even know what they're saying?
No.
You're putting your foot up on set. You just think this is a couch? This is embarrassing. I mean, even here, you're starting to interrogate somebody. Look at you. Turn your back to the camera. That's embarrassing. Where's your suit and tie? You have a Pirates shirt on.
They made the playoffs.
I don't care. You can't be biased. This is ridiculous. Ay, Dios mío.
And welcome back into the Big Hit. It's time to move into the world of Major League Baseball with our call to the bullpen, and we've got some good analysts to do that with Sarah Moltz, and Chris Hayes probably feels about 10 pounds lighter with the new fresh cut. Let's talk some baseball, guys, and let's start with the World Series, the 110th edition of the World Series, and what a World Series it was, with San Francisco winning 4-3, Game 7 in Kauffman Stadium. The Giants were able to prevail, and what a World Series. You couldn't ask for much more.
No, it definitely was. I was very impressed with both teams, even though I wanted the Royals to win. Unfortunately, they didn't, but they definitely put up a tough fight, for the Giants. Their pitcher, Madison Bumgarner, was definitely their best guy. There was a key player. But I was very impressed with both teams. They both deserved to be in the World Series, and they both played really well. So I was very impressed with the World Series.
I agree. It was a pretty unlikely World Series. Giants and Royals were both the wild card teams. I had the Giants winning, and they did win in 7 games, but it was a close series, very good series. The Royals give it all they had. They're the underdogs. They gave all they had. But in the end, Madison Bumgarner was just too good. The pitching for the Giants overwhelmed the Royals.
Yeah, and the San Francisco Giants were put at 20-1 odds going into the season to win the World Series. They were able to prevail and win their 8th title overall, their 3rd from moving to San Francisco. But let's go ahead and look at the end of the year awards. We're not going to get into free agency just yet. Let's just go ahead and look at the end of the year awards as those names were announced. Let's go ahead and begin with the National League MVP. The candidates: Clayton Kershaw, Andrew McCutchen, and Giancarlo Stanton. Who's coming away with that crown?
Out of all three, the top, I'm going to have to go to Clayton Kershaw. He's definitely the best out of all three of them. He has 25 starts. He was voted National League's outstanding player. He's leading in the National League with wins, strikeouts. He's basically fantabulous, and I like him a lot. So I'm definitely going to have to go to Clayton Kershaw for the National League MVP.
I agree. Kershaw was just too good this season. It was a historic season for Clayton Kershaw among pitchers. His WAR, which stands for wins above replacement, it's an advanced statistic used in baseball. His WAR was 8. That was tops in all of the major leagues. Pitchers and hitters are all in that category. He had an ERA of 1.77, 21 wins, a .857 walks and hits per innings pitched. That's all just dominant stuff. Great year for Clayton Kershaw. I think he'll come up with the NL MVP.
Yeah, I don't know if there are enough superlatives that we can use to describe one Clayton Kershaw. Looks like a runaway with him, but we'll have to keep posted and see with that. The American League MVP award looks a bit more wide open, though, with Michael Brantley, Victor Hudson, and Mike Trout. It looks like one guy kind of edges above the rest, but who do you have winning the American League MVP?
I'm definitely going to have to go with Mike Trout for sure, for several reasons. He's had 36 home runs this past season. He's ranked top 5, and he's already was awarded the American League's Hank Horner Award, and plus, not to mention that he's helped the Angels get to the playoffs. He was their main guy, and you can't really say much more about him. So I'm definitely going to have to go with Trout for that one.
Yeah, the last 2 years, Mike Trout lost the MVP race to Miguel Cabrera. That's not going to happen this year. Mike Trout's going to win the MVP award in the American League. He had a great season. His batting average decreased, but his power numbers did increase. He had 36 home runs, 111 RBIs. He was first in the American League in wins above replacement. All those stats will give Trout the MVP this year.
And going ahead and moving and taking a look at the Cy Young Awards, starting with the American League. The candidates are Felix Hernandez, Corey Kubler, and Chris Sale. 3 very viable options. Who comes away with the American Cy Young?
I think they're all great, but I'm definitely going to have to go with Felix Hernandez. He's had 32 starts. He's leading the league in ERAs. He's also a huge reason why Seattle even was in the postseason. So I definitely think that out of the 3 of them, Felix Hernandez is going to be the guy. Not to mention that he was the winner of the 2010 award. So he just kind of has all the characteristics of winning that award, and I hope he does win it because he deserves it.
This is where our views differ, Sarah. I'm gonna have to go with Corey Kluber here for the AL Cy Young. He came out of nowhere for this Indians team that almost made the playoffs. He led AL pitchers in WAR and wins. He was third in ERA. He carried that Indians pitching staff, so I'm going to have to go with Corey Kluber, not Felix Hernandez here.
And shifting our focus to the National League side of things in the Cy Young race, Johnny Cueto, Clayton Kershaw, and Adam Wainwright. Kershaw with that tremendous wins above replacement. Does he come away with the Cy Young here?
You know what, I'm definitely going to have to say yes for that one. I know that it's kind of hard for a pitcher to win. Well, obviously not that hard, but still, I think that I'm definitely have to go with him for sure, even though it is hard for him to win both. I definitely think he has a chance. We already said all the reasons why. You know, he's leading in wins, strikeouts, everything possible. So I definitely think that he has a really high chance of winning both the MVP and Cy Young award.
Yeah, Adam Wainwright and Johnny Cueto both had fantastic years, but you can't really compare him to Clayton Kershaw at this point. Kershaw was just too good. All those stats we mentioned before, he'll get the NL Cy Young in a landslide.
And now shifting our attention to rookies here in baseball. In the American League side of things, you've got Jose Abreu, Dylan Betances, and Matt Shoemaker. Who is going to win the American League Rookie of the Year honor?
I think all of them are pretty good. I won't really know what three to pick, but I think if I had to go with one of them, obviously I'd have to go with Jose Abreu. He's had 35 home runs. He leads in slugging. He adjusted to the major league with an impressive batting average, and he's just really amazing. And I saw a lot from him this season that I haven't seen in a while from a lot of players. So I really think that out of the three of them, Jose Abreu has to be the guy.
I agree. It's Jose Abreu. He tied for third in the American League in home runs, had 107 RBIs, a 317 batting average as a rookie. You can't really say much about those stats other than they're fantastic for a first-year player. So Jose Abreu's got my vote.
And our final category here, just running through the list of potential award winners, is the National League Rookie of the Year. 3 candidates as well, with Jacob deGrom from the Mets, Billy Hamilton from the Reds, and Colton Wong from the Cardinals. Who comes away with the NL Rookie of the Year? This looks like it could be the toughest choice of the 3.
I'm definitely going to have to go with Billy Hamilton of the Reds. He was on fire in June. He was strong. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if maybe he might get it because he did kind of slug a little bit. He wasn't as on fire. His batting average dropped a little bit. But I think that with his 56 stolen bases and his fast speed, I think that he'll be able to get that advantage over some of the other 2 candidates.
Yeah, Hamilton had a very good year, but I'm going to go against the grain and say Jacob deGrom wins the award. He was 9-6, a 2.69 ERA, a 1.14 walks and hits per innings pitched. Excuse me. He was very impressive on a mediocre New York Mets team that didn't do much. So I think Jacob deGrom will win that award.
Yeah, it should be very interesting. Baseball free agency just moments away. The Pirates, of course, tendering qualifying offers to both Russell Martin and Francisco Liriano, looking to get some compensatory picks for them. But that might be for another segment. We'll leave it here. Sarah Moltz, Chris Hayes, thanks, guys. We've got the call, or not the call to the bullpen, the penalty box. We're going to hit the ice in the penalty box coming up next in just a moment. This is The Big Hit.
Success. We see it every day. Hundreds of majors and programs, bachelor's degrees to PhDs, small classes, internationally known faculty who are committed to your success. Real-world experiences to guide you on your career and life path. An alumni network 120,000 strong. I'm IUP President Mike Driscoll. Visit us. Find your success at Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
And welcome back into The Big Hit. It's always a good time here as we talk some National Hockey League in the penalty box, and we've got the big guys joining us, Mike Gosnell and Sean Fritz. Guys, let's go ahead and jump in to the world of the NHL with some injury news to start, because there were a few injuries to some key players, and we're going to start here with Ryan McDonagh and his shoulder injury, and Taylor Hall and his knee injury. Taylor Hall has 10 points in 11 games this year, and Ryan McDonagh has had this nagging shoulder injury before. So right now I want to know, which injury affects their team more? Is it McDonagh or Hall?
Looking at these two teams, they're polar opposites. Taylor Hall is a very integral part of the Edmonton Oilers, and I think this injury is going to really halt their momentum that they were gaining. They were winning a couple games, stringing together some nice wins, but not having Taylor Hall, really their best first-round pick of 3 that they had to choose from, it's going to hurt. And looking on New York's side of things, they have some depth in Hartford in the AHL that can really get them through this. Played a great game against St. Louis. Unfortunately, got the shootout loss there. But if you're looking at the two teams, depth-wise, New York wins out. And Edmonton, they can ill afford to lose anybody. And Taylor Hall, 10 points in 11 games. I think that's going to be very detrimental to them.
I'm going to have to disagree with you. I think, you make a good point with the depth at the blue line for the Rangers, bringing up guys like McElrath and Allen from Hartford. But at the same time, I think nobody really pictured this Edmonton team to be a contender in the Western Conference. And you're absolutely right. Taylor Hall is a predominant player on this Edmonton team. But I think it's going to give an opportunity for guys like Nugent Hopkins and Jordan Eberle to step up a little bit, step their game up, and also a couple of other guys too. So I would have to say that it definitely hurts the Rangers the most, just because this is the fourth member of their top six to be sidelined by an injury or suspension or whatever it is, with Dan Boyle, John Moore, and now Kevin Klein as well. So I think right now it hurts the Rangers. I think in a tight Metropolitan division, I think that they're going to have to just be able to hang on for a little bit, which I think that they're definitely going to be able to do until they can start getting these guys back gradually.
Yeah, two key injuries to two key players, and you have to think that this trend is just going to continue here in hockey. It's just the nature of the game. There's going to be a few guys out with injuries, but we talked about one New York team with Ryan McDonough and the Rangers. Let's go ahead and talk about the other New York team, that being the New York Islanders, because they're playing very well. 12 points, 3 behind the division-leading Pittsburgh Penguins, which we'll touch on in a second. But what's been the key for the Islanders' hot start? Because they're playing some really good hockey.
They have been, but they've hit a slide recently, losing 3 games, but when you look at this team, you automatically go to one guy, and that's John Tavares. But if you really have watched the New York Islanders, you know they have some really key facets in their roster, particularly Brock Nelson, Kyle Okposo, and a really underrated acquisition before the season even got started, Johnny Boychuk, who's really sort of blossomed into an offensive defenseman, really not what he was known for in the AHL or in the NHL with Boston as his previous team. They're multifaceted in New York. They can kill you with speed. They're a smart hockey team. They don't take a lot of penalties, but they're still relatively young. Some guys that really haven't cut their teeth yet in the NHL. Ryan Strome comes to mind, 7 assists, no goals in 11 games. He still has some learning to do. Calvin DeHaan is another guy on defense, paired with Travis Hamonic. That's a great pairing for them. He brings them a lot of physicality. They still have some learning to do. Goaltending, they're almost set. Yaroslav Halak is a great addition. A little bit inconsistent, and that can be partially blamed for the defense because the defense is still young. Young team with a great leader as their captain in Tavares. They're playing well because they are a good, smart hockey team. They're young, and they have a lot of learning to do, but at the same time, when you're young, it's a lot easier. Maybe you make some mistakes, you learn from it quicker, and I think that's what's happening in New York. The Islanders are enjoying a nice little renaissance here. Absolutely.
I think you hit it right on the head. I think you talk about this New York Islanders team, you look to one guy, and that's John Tavares, a rising star in the National Hockey League. And then, you throw in guys like Brock Nelson, who's another young guy who's played very well. I think Tavares, Nelson, and then you also throw in Kyle Okposo, who's another veteran leader on this team with some offensive skills. They're all tied for the team lead in points with 12. And I think, exactly like you said, Johnny Boychuk, adding in some offensive along with his defensive ability too. I think that's just led to some success for them at the start. A little bit of a rough patch for them right now, struggling a little bit, but I think they're going to be all right. I think they're going to compete for the rest of the year in the Metropolitan Division, and I think once they start getting some more consistent goaltending from Jaro Halak and Chad Johnson when he gets in there for some spot starts, I think that they're definitely going to continue this early success that they've had.
And they've really had to learn on the fly too with some guys that are really young. Losing Mikhail Grabowski there for a little bit, that hurts. But I think they have some really good depth guys that can really step in. So New York, not a laughingstock anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the New York Islanders, I think one of the things that comes to mind, at least for me, is the amount of speed they possess. And anytime you're playing a team with speed, it's going to be a tough task because it's just so tough to defend them. and they can do so much. So the New York Islanders playing well. Let's see if they can keep that pace up. But they're trailing the leaders of the Metropolitan Division right now, that being the Pittsburgh Penguins. 3 shutouts in the past 4 games. It's really been a team effort overall for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Currently playing the Minnesota Wild as we speak. An interesting matchup there. But the Pittsburgh Penguins playing some great hockey. New head coach Mike Johnston said there was a learning curve to his system, but we haven't seen it. What are the key changes to this Penguins team that have allowed them to play so great?
And you've actually you took the words right out of my mouth. There was no learning curve visible whatsoever. It seems like they really bought into what he was selling early, and it's shown. 3 shutouts, excellent defensive effort. Something that really I have been really, people say unfairly critical of the Penguins when it comes to defense, but the facts were there. They were not a good defensive team under Dan Bylsma, and it's exactly the opposite. Mike Johnston, of course, coached some really good teams in junior hockey, and when you're learning with kids, sometimes you can take some of what you're doing there and it transitions into the pro game. And I think it was a perfect fit, but when you're looking at the ice, the product on the ice right now, it's just been phenomenal. Patrick Hornquist seems to be a fantastic addition. They don't really seem to miss James Neal at all. Hornquist has stepped in on that top line and really, or top 6, and really seems comfortable. Nick Spaulding rounding out that bottom 6. They got better in every facet that they needed to be to get better in the offseason, and it's showing.
I agree completely. I think Patrick Hornquist is a great addition, but I also think, you say the word shutout, you think of one guy, and that's Marc-Andre Fleury. He's played phenomenal of late, 931 save percentage, and I think Fleury has played really well, but I think they've also played very well in front of him. And, we were talking about the defense. I also think the offense has a large role in their success of late. I think the power play has been phenomenal. 41% on the power play, that's number 1 in the National Hockey League. And their goal differential is they've outscored opponents 41-22. It's a lot easier playing with a lead, and Marc-Andre Fleury is figuring that out, and I think the rest of the Penguins are. I think that's a key part to their success right now.
Yeah, and the Pittsburgh Penguins are one of the most explosive teams in hockey as far as goals for, and anytime you have the lead, you can kind of just pack it in a bit of a shell. Obviously, not completely play defensive style, but you can really dictate the way the game is played. And Marc-Andre Fleury playing very well in a contract year. But looking at one team that is doing well in the Penguins to a team that is not doing so well right now in the Western Conference, that being the Colorado Avalanche under second-year head coach Patrick Waugh. They're having a rough go of things right now, to put it mildly. What do they have to do to turn things around?
Get healthy. I mean, they've had some really bad injuries to their goaltenders. They're getting healthier, the goaltenders, both of them, I believe. Semyon Varlamov and Reto Barrow are also back on the ice for them, but they just don't seem to be playing consistently. They're missing Paul Stastny as their number 1 center, and it can't be more clear than that. They're missing Paul Stastny. If there's a way they could sign him and get him back, they would, but they can't. Their youth is finally starting to show. I think last year might have been a little bit of a fluke, but it's too early really to say that. But they're just not playing great hockey right now. Patrick Waugh is probably having fits in the locker room with his young team. Nathan McKinnon currently leading the way in points for the young Avalanche. They still have time to turn it around. The Central Division is very tight, but they got to figure things out quickly. Otherwise, they're just going to get even more behind the 8 ball. And in hockey, if you're 1 step behind and teams are 2 steps above you, it's really hard to gain some ground.
I think, again, I agree completely. I think the loss of Paul Stastny has really hurt this Colorado team. I think in turn of that, they're going to have to look for McKinnon for more points. He's another rising star in the National Hockey League. He's a young kid, 19 years old, but I think they're going to look to him for more points and to kind of jumpstart their offense. I know they've struggled offensively and defensively. The goaltending, like you said, it's healthy, and they've been getting better in the net, but I think just playing in front of them, I think is going to be, they're something that they're really going to have to, get back to working on. I think they've just struggled completely, and I think, you saw it the other night against Anaheim. I think playing, a consistent full 60 minutes, not just one period, is going to be a key for them, and that's all part of their youth, I think, and like I said, they're going to look to McKinnon, but I think maybe they can also look to guys like Jerome McGinley, Danny Briere, some veterans on the team who can, help put up some offensive production. One bright spot for him, though, has been the penalty kill. It's been phenomenal. towards the top tier of the league in the penalty kill. So hopefully they can use that for some momentum in some of these games and hopefully get some pucks in the back of the net.
And this is a good challenge for Patrick Waugh as well. In his head coaching career, both in junior and in his short career in the NHL, he's never coached a loser.
Yeah.
So this is a good challenge for him as well.
Yeah, and this is a very young team, the Colorado Avalanche, and you know there is a bit of a curve to playing in the NHL at the NHL level. But the good thing is a lot of time left in the NHL season. Things just getting started, and we're glad to have the NHL back. We're glad to have the Beards back as well, Mike Gosnell and Sean Fritz. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because we're going to step back on the gridiron in just a moment and close the show out with our college football segment in the Red Zone Recap. We'll be right back, everybody. This is The Big Hit.
Students in communications media at Indiana University of Pennsylvania can focus on a variety of areas, including media promotions. Our promotion students learn their skills by working in a hands-on environment, gaining real-world experience. They learn how to use media to promote, produce, and manage events, and how media organizations operate. They create promotional campaigns and help clients pitch their services, products, and events. With excellent classes led by experienced teachers, the Communications Media Department at IUP is perfect for students interested in media promotions.
And welcome back into The Big Hit, everybody. We certainly hope you're enjoying the show to this point. We've talked a lot of sports, and we're going to close things out today with our college football segment in the Red Zone Recap with Cody Benjamin and Isak Muhammad. Guys, let's go ahead and jump right in. A lot of games to discuss, a lot of good games also to discuss, and we're going to run through them all here in this segment, beginning with a top 5 clash featuring the Auburn Tigers, number 3 in the country, against the Ole Miss Rebels, number 4 in the country. What a thrilling game on Saturday those two teams played. Auburn narrowly escaped Ole Miss with a victory, beating them 35-31. That was the final score in that one. What were the key factors to this win? Because it seemed like it was one of those games that could have gone either way.
Yeah, I think for Auburn, like you mentioned, it could go either way. And I think they were clutch when it mattered and where it mattered. They forced 2 fumbles in the fourth quarter, one of them in the red zone, where the unfortunate injury occurred with 90 seconds left at the goal line. They also got pressure up front, 4 sacks on Bo Wallace. And also, on the flip side, offensively, they started fast, and I think they were relentless throughout the night. They scored on their first drive, kind of made a statement. And they also put up more yards and more points against Ole Miss than any other team this season. So I think the biggest thing, though, going back to it, is just they came up big when they needed to.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that. The running game by Auburn was outstanding. They had 248 yards, and Cameron Artis-Payne had 138 on the ground. And when they're running the ball like that, I don't think anyone can stop them. And turnovers by Ole Miss, they caused Auburn to gain the upper hand. And Sammy Coates had a huge game with 122 yards.
Yeah.
Also, Nick Marshall looked amazing in the read option. He had quite a few yards on the ground also.
Yeah, a lot of good individual performances for a lot of people. Turnovers really seem to be the bugaboo for Ole Miss. Bo Wallace had 341 yards passing, added 56 yards on the ground. Not enough. Ole Miss drops their second straight game. But let's go ahead and take a look at the number 1 team in the nation, as Mississippi State was almost upset, but they avoided an upset bid against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Mississippi State now 8-0 on the year. They won 17-10 at home. The Cowbells were going crazy at Mississippi State. But what do you make of Mississippi State's performance in this SEC clash? It shows you have to come to play every single week.
Right, and I think you can take, there were good and bad signs from this game. At the end of the day, a win is a win, even though it was ugly. And obviously they made a 4th and goal stop, a red zone interception. That shows, just as Auburn did, you're coming up in the clutch. And they also overcame a 10-point hole, so it's not as if they didn't have to overcome something in that game. On the flip side, though, the defense surrendered 401 total yards, so that has to be concerning. Also, Dak Prescott threw 2 interceptions. So there are things to improve on, but I know one thing Prescott said this week was just that they need to go into the next game and just kind of have fun and play the game, because obviously style points, they are going to be looking for those in terms of wins and rankings. But, you know, a win is a win at the end of the day, and they just have to improve moving forward.
Yeah. In this game, Mississippi, they played very sloppy. I don't understand how they won. They shouldn't have won, in my opinion. Arkansas, they missed a field goal where they could have went up early in the fourth quarter, and that hurt them substantially. And Dak Prescott, he had a career-high game today, and that was one of the bright sides. Also, Josh Robinson, who had 110 receiving yards and 64 on the ground. Mississippi can't play like this if they expect to beat teams like Ole Miss or Alabama. They just can't do that in the SEC. You have to have more than one dimension.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also alluded to Josh Robinson. What a day for him. If you're giving the game ball to somebody, you would think he would be the guy that gets that game ball. Mississippi State narrowly edges Arizona, or Arkansas rather, but it just shows in the SEC you've got to come and bring your A game every week or else you might get upset. But let's go ahead and move on to one of the most exciting games here in the local side of things. TCU and West Virginia, a clash of top 20 teams from Morgantown. It was a very exciting game, another Big 12 classic between these two teams. You almost expect that every time they get together. TCU now 7-1 on the year, defeated West Virginia 31-30. West Virginia now 6-3 on the year. And how did TCU win this game? Because it was just one of those games that you wanted to tune in from start to finish.
Yeah, I don't think it helped that West Virginia kind of left a receiver uncovered on the final drive, but to me it just comes down to turnovers. You know, how many times do we see, whether it's college football or the NFL, it doesn't really matter how well you play. If you have turnovers at the end of the day, that's going to come back to haunt you. TCU forced 5 of them. All of them brought the Horned Frogs into West Virginia territory. So at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to for me. It was kind of an odd game too. Even Boykin for TCU, a week after throwing 7 touchdowns, he had an off night. But TCU, at the end of the day, turnovers is what got them the job done.
Yeah, TCU won this game because of one thing, turnovers. Turnovers wins games. TCU forced 5 turnovers compared to how many turnovers they allowed, which was 2. And Kevin White was shut down. He's supposed to be a Heisman player. He only had 28 yards. Clint Trickett had 2 picks, the West Virginia quarterback. And B.J. Catalon from TCU, he had a good game. He had over 100 yards on the ground. And if he keeps playing like this and they get their offense together, they'll be in playoff hopes to go far.
Yeah, and this TCU offense is really something. It's amazing what they've been able to do. 16 drives this year. They have scored a touchdown in 1 minute or less off the clock. They're able to score quickly and score often as well. And that's a pretty interesting thing to consider, especially with how they've been playing of late. TCU winning against West Virginia in a tremendous game. But let's go ahead and take a look at the big picture here finally. The top 25 rankings, more specifically the top 4. With Ole Miss losing, you have to expect them to drop out of that top 4, and that leaves some room for a couple of other teams, including Oregon, Alabama, TCU, and Michigan State, 5, 6, 7, and 8 respectively. Which team do you think has the best chance to make it into the top 4?
Well, you just touched on TCU and how explosive they've been, and I really want to say TCU, but I'm going to go with Oregon. TCU still has to get past the top 10 team, K-State. And Oregon, I feel like all they really have to do is get past Utah, and I think they just have the easier road moving forward. I want to say TCU, and I think they have a shot, but I'm going to go with Oregon.
Also, I would like to go with Oregon too because their offense is just diverse, and they're not afraid to spread the ball, and they know how to get the ball out to different receivers, running backs. They're not afraid to show what they can do on offense. And they really only have to have one team that they're afraid of. Well, not really afraid of, but one team they have to get by, and that's Utah. And the rest of their schedule looks pretty easy. I mean, Alabama has Amari Cooper and T.J. Yeldon, but I'm still going with Oregon.
Yeah, absolutely. And anytime you have a guy by the name of Marcus Mariota leading the charge and an offense and a team the likes of Oregon, there have been a lot of people's national title contenders and things of that nature all year long. You have to assume they're going to be put back in this position, but that's all the time we have here on the college football segment in the Red Zone Recap, and that's all the time we have here for the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. A bit of an awkward scenario here closing the show out, but for Cody Benjamin and Isaac Muhammad, we urge you to follow us on Twitter at IUP_big_hit, and like us on Facebook as well. For everybody behind the scenes, director Michael Mattingly Martone and producers Malusi Kitchen and Kyle Condor, they're out of control, and so are we. It's the Big Hit. Good night, everybody.